This information is important to those players who have some difficult, close matchups with specific players or characters who want to get an edge on their counterpick. The Art of Counterpicking Stages, and yes, it is an art. In order to counterpick effectively, you have to know a few things first. First, and this is important, do not forget about the non-neutral set of stages. These are very valuable tools that you have at your disposal. Do not forget this. The second thing, this is also very important, take your time. There is no need to rush into a counterpick without confidence because you feel bad about making your opponent wait 1 full minute for you to get a legitimate counterpick. Please take your time. Since you've obviously lost at least one match, it is your counterpick after all, you obviously were having some trouble dealing with certain things. Most people likely will look first at what gives their character the immediate advantage. However, before thinking about that, let's think about the art of the counterpick in further detail. After losing any match, you should be asking yourself the question, what went wrong? The answer to this question obviously varies. You should first think about what your opponent was doing that was giving you trouble. Off the top kills, on the sides, edge guarding, low percent cheap kills? Was the player being particularly campy? If so, in what way? Was the opponent being overly aggressive and overwhelming you? There are obviously other things to ask. Those are just some examples. Think about how you were being bested and what kind of stages would best help defend you from that. Would a high ceiling help you? Would a larger blast zone for horizontal KOs help? Would a stage where it is more difficult for a character to traditionally edgeguard be desirable? Would a stage with more or less spots to camp effectively help? After you consider all of these things and think of the stages you can use, you should begin to think about what gives you an advantage. How are you scoring your KOs? Again, it's the same questions you should ask. Off the top kills, on the sides, edge guarding, low percent cheap kills, camping styles, offensive pressure. Think about what was giving you a general advantage and how you were scoring your kills, and what stages would be helpful for both of those things. Low ceilings, smaller horizontal blast zones, more spots to camp, a smaller main platform so you can effectively pressure your opponents. Once you have all these things in mind, you should have a list of stages available to choose from that gives you advantages in your strengths and limits your opponent in their strong areas. After you have considered both of these things, you should then factor in both of your characters, although in part the issues above should cover this. Some characters have advantage when working with more platforms, some when working with less. Some characters have a great horizontal recovery but a rather weak vertical recovery. Consider the general characteristics of the character you are playing versus the character your opponent is playing and limit your counterpick stages accordingly. Sometimes you may have to make a choice between giving yourself an upgrade and your opponent a downgrade. In this case, use your best judgment to decide what will be most effective for you. Another thing you should consider before selecting your stage is the opponent you are playing against, as in the actual human player. Some players have so much practice on Final Destination or any of the neutral stages that by taking them there, your so-called advantages will quickly disappear. Some players are very good at adapting to the changes of the non-neutral stages, but aren't particularly inclined to any neutral over any other. Knowing your opponent's best and worst stages is very helpful at this time. If you know that taking your opponent to a stage like Poké Floats is going to throw them off enough that they may very well SD away all 4 of their stock, that could be your best counterpick, even though based on the rest of this you would think something different. And alternately, if you know that your opponent knows every nook and cranny of Rainbow Cruise, taking them there isn't going to do you any good. So now you should have a general idea of what your ideal stage should look like. Ceiling height, horizontal kill blast zone, platform setups to encourage or discourage camping, ease of edge guarding or recovery, and finally player preference. So now you know your stage. But wait, there is one more incredibly unfortunate factor that you must think about in making your final decision: your opponent's secondary characters. Selecting a stage where you think your opponent will switch characters to give you an advantage is a very risky maneuver, but taking a player to Final Destination only to find that their cursor finds its way over the Ice Climber secondary quickly makes your advantage their advantage. Basically, the point is you should probably think more about your counterpick stage than you currently are. Good luck effectively counterpicking.